Communist Party of Nepal Maoist Center Politburo Sadasya Comrade Yuboraj Chaulagain. Now I request Comrade Yuboraj Chaulagain to deliver his speech.
Comrades from organizing committee, comrades from India, comrades from Sri Lanka, and all the comrades who are here. I salute you all from the country of Mount Everest. May I salute you. I am sorry that I cannot speak in Bangla, so I will go through a paper. I have Since the emergence of feudal arrangement of the human civilization, exploitation of majority of people, the working class, in one way or other has been continuing. It is not that the slaves or the working class people had not retaliated. The first most remarkable and strong retaliation in the ancient history, which has been recorded and appreciated by supporters of working class people, is the revolt initiated by Spartacus. Karl Marx himself has acclaimed him as a real representative of ancient proletariat. But that revolt was crushed deceitfully and relentlessly. The rising class of exploiters always replaced the world ruling group of exploiters with no tint of hope of liberation among the working and downtrodden people of that time. But the history shows that several times in different periods, revolutions have been launched with a strong confidence and optimism. The Paris Commune had aroused such optimism among working class people of the world that the leadership of proletariat could be established for the welfare and liberation of downtrodden people. But because of the lack of skillful leadership and organization, it failed within 72 days with the loss of thousands of lives. The hope of the majority of exploited workers was shattered. It was only after nearly a half century of the Paris Commune that the October Revolution in Russia, under the astute and far-sighted leadership of Comrade Lenin, a socialist form of rule could be established, which awake people with hope and confidence around the globe. With the proletariat rule is not only possible, but it is indispensable for the liberation from the strong chain of suppression, exploitation, and slavery. The October Socialist Revolution, the most consequential event in the 20th century, was the first overthrow of the capitalism in the history, which happened after 70 years of declaration of Communist Manifesto by Karl Marx. The victory of the October Revolution proved that the conquest of political power by the working class people depends, in the final analysis, upon the building of a true communist party on the working class people. No matter how large and powerful the mass movement of the working class, its victory over capitalism requires the conscious political leadership of a revolutionary communist party. There is no other way the victory of the socialist revolution can be achieved. The success of this revolution not only provided people of Russia the liberation from exploitation, but also an opportunity to run the country by the people of their own level. Illiteracy was fully eliminated within a decade. It was the Soviet Union which initiated provision of universal primary education, equal rights, equal wages, and rights to vote for women, free medical care for all citizens, and provisions of 5-year plan for the development of the country were also introduced first time in the world by Soviet Union. It was only the year 1928, where rights to vote for women in England, a country which claims to be a mother of democracy herself, was recognized. The economic growth after the revolution till 1965, as described by British economic historian Angus Madison, was the fastest in the world, leaving behind even the developed countries, including Japan. Thus, the October Revolution left powerful influence all over the world in 20th century. The October Revolution did not limit its sphere only in Soviet Union for liberation of people. It crossed the land border and sea border and ignited a string of national liberation struggle in Asia, Africa, and Latin America, which brought a great upheaval in the ruling class in these countries. Thus, Communist Party in many countries of the world was formed in one name or another, even in the developed countries like USA, UK, France, Germany, and Japan. Its formation, though late, was also in Muslim countries like Iran, Iraq, and Saudi Arabia. Some ideological questions. Being the first successful effort following the Marxist theory in the world, October Revolution has been widely considered as the most beautiful combination of the ideology and the practices of Marxism. There has been many debates and discussions on the several issues of the revolution, but here it is better to go through two important issues which can be useful for the contemporary communist movement. In the viewpoint of historical and dialectical materialism, the evaluation of the consequences of revolution will help to learn the lesson from them, and this will help all of us to uphold the flag of October Revolution in our countries. One, the question of people's democracy in socialism. In the new situation after revolution, Lenin developed wholesome principles of people's centralism based on principle Marxists prolong that the dictatorship of the proletariat can be strengthened only by bringing proletariat people's democracy to new height. Lenin clearly explained the fact of freedom of criticism and uniformity in action as the main essence of the people's centralism. Lenin especially stressed that the practice of proletariat democracy is possible not by dismissing formal bourgeoisie democracy, but by bringing it to new height. Lenin was in fact raising principles and behavior of people's democracy to a newer height while explaining the fact that without ensuring the freedom of criticism, uniformity in action cannot be ensured. Being clear about the difference between interrelationship of people's democracy and socialism, on the eve of October Socialist Revolution, Lenin advanced the slogan, total power to the Soviets. In the process of suppression of reactionary resistance immediately after the 1970s, Socialist Revolution, however, was practiced in the 3 years of war communism that gave birth to a serious discussion amidst the international communist movement. Suppression of reactionary resistance was and became possible only by reduction of people's democracy and increase of centralism. Simultaneously, it brought forward the discussion on the question of the basic principles of the difference between people's democracy and socialism. It is essential to reflect the critique of Rosa Luxemburg in this regard. Rosa rightly saying that without competition among the parties and without freedom of speech, press, and organization, it is never possible for workers' class to become the ruler, and without political freedom, it is not possible to find out thousands of solutions to thousands of problems. Compulsory revealing during transitional phase of socialism. It is to be especially reminded about Lenin's one remarks that the Russian people might rightly hang up one day with a strong rope, which will be justifiable too, if the bourgeois democracy within 3-4 years of Soviet rule is not corrected. This remark of him during the final days of his life clarifies how much angry and painful Lenin was by the bureaucracy being progressively pervasive in the party and Soviet rule. Lenin's warning against deteriorating economic policy and bureaucracy reveals mainly his worry and desire for expansion of proletariat democracy. However, owing to his deteriorating health condition, he was not in a position of decisive intervention in the party and government, and he died without fulfilling this initiative and desire. Question of evaluation of Comrade Stalin. After the death of Lenin, the leadership of the whole party and also the international communist movement transferred to Comrade Stalin. Comrade Stalin contributed in the proletariat movement by his action of historical importance in establishing Leninism, defeat opportunism of that period, strengthen Soviet by collective farming and planned economic development, defeat Hitler's fascism in the Second World War, synthesize the experience of economic development, and to lead international communist movement for 3 decades. But despite big contributions, it is necessary to correctly understand many serious weaknesses of Comrade Stalin in his understanding and application of dialectical materialism, people's democratic centralism, and the interrelationship of political people's democracy and socialism. Certainly, the starting point and basis of Comrade Stalin's evaluation must be based on Comrade Mao's evaluation. Chinese Communist Party under the leadership of Comrade Mao Zedong has correctly said that the question of Stalin is of worldwide importance, and effect of which is widespread in all countries and classes and is freely being debated even today, and on which different classes and their political parties have different views. There is a great possibility that there will be no conclusion on this question even during this entire millennium. The millennium, as mentioned by Comrade Mao, is over now, and 21st century has already started. We must focus to defend Stalin's 70% positive contributions to the communist movement and take a lessons from his 30% weaknesses so that it will be beneficial to the communists to take this smaller mistake of Stalin as historical learning and challenges not to speak, but not to repeat, but lessen these mistakes. It is to be noted here that there are 2 aspects of the mistakes of Comrade Stalin. One which can be copied is the weakness that happens compulsorily on the background of lack of prior experience of the leadership of the proletariat, and other is because of ideological mistakes. It is not possible to control the mistake arisen out of the first type of situation, whereas the second type was possible to control. Communist parties, communist movement in Nepal. The October Revolution has a long-lasting impact and influence in Nepal. As the struggle against autocratic and colonial rule had instigated widespread waves all over the globe, Nepal could not stand apart. The Communist Party of Nepal, established in 22 April 1949 under the leadership of Comrade Puspalal, started its movement against oligarchy Rana regime. Since its inception, it had adopted an ideology of new democratic revolution against feudalism and imperialism. It had adopted an ideology of new democratic revolution against feudalism and imperialism. Under the leadership of Communist Party, the people advanced to fight with arms against Indian expansionism, thereupon the Nepali Congress Party, and the feudal king. The 3 forces has plotted to crush the people's movement through Delhi occurred. In this connection, the armed revolution launched in Bhairava, the plain land of country's western part, was brutally crushed by the help of Indian army. Most notable armed revolt against feudalism and expansionism sprang in far western plain land under the leadership of peasant leader Bhimdatta Panta in 1952 and 53. This was also brutally smashed, cutting the head of Bhimdatta Panta by Indian army invited by then government. The Second Party Congress in 1957 also ratified republic system of rule in the country as its party program. Peasants' movement under the leadership of Communist Party ripened in many parts of the country, including Bara, Parsa, and Rohtak districts. The rebellion disobeyed the administration and destroyed bond papers of feudal, broke their granaries, and organized violent struggles. But ironically, the then party leader Kesarjan Rai Maji surrendered before the king, which brought a long-term effect in Nepali communist movement. There was 3-decade-long king's direct rule in the name of Panchayati rule from 1960 to 1990 in Nepal. Communist Party and other parties as well were underground during those days and were preparing to fight against the monarchy for the establishment of new political order in the country, even though there were many splinter groups in the communist movement. Comrade Prachanda, the then General Secretary of CPN, Communist Party of Nepal, Masal, initiated a series of conversations for the unification, and finally leaders of 4 different parties agreed to form a new single communist party in the name of Communist Party of Nepal Unity Center. The party converted itself as Communist Party of Nepal Maoist before the declarations of People War in 1996. CPN Maoist, under the leadership of Comrade Prachanda, led the People's War from more than a decade with sacrifice of nearly 13,000 cadres, disappearance of more than 5,000 people, and hundreds of thousands wounded in the war. People's War in Nepal formed its one People's Liberation Army in the number of 32,000, captured nearly more than 80% area of the nation with the establishment of People's Government and People's Court. The involvement of women, Dalits, and marginalized groups of people in the People's War was extraordinarily high. Reactionary state used its final power, then Royal Nepalese Army, with the direct support of USA against the people for 5 consecutive years to suppress the People's War, but they failed to do so. Eventually, it changed the regime of Nepal with new political order and the establishment of revolutionary forces to the state power of the nation. During the first 5 years of People's War, party tried to adopt the Chinese model of revolution by capturing the state power slowly after capturing the rural areas and smaller cities. For the second 5 years, party advocated the model of fusion of 2 models, namely Russian and Chinese ones. Party synthesized its experience on Prachanda Path as Prachanda Path, and it is mentioned as guiding principle of the party, which later on postponed it during the process of unification. Nationalism and democracy were the 2 major pillars of the ideological and political works of the party during those days, which received a huge support of mass of the people. From the 7th National Congress, February 2014, party is adopting socialism as its strategy, clearing that the remaining tasks of the new democratic revolution should be done together. Maoist revolutionaries and 7 major parliamentarian parties joined hands together to hold the election of Constituent Assembly after the reinitiation of unconstitutional autocratic rule of then King, and thus the popular 12-point agreement between 2 sides held in 2006. Kathmandu streets were captured by thousands people, including then terrorists declared Maoist cadres, with the demand of abolition of monarchy, election of the Constituent Assembly, federalism, secularism, inclusive democracy, social justice, and so on. The monarch kneeled down, world constitution was overthrown by interim one, and the election of Constituent Assembly held down by 2008. Maoist party emerged as single largest party from the ballot box, and Chairman Prachanda became the first elected Prime Minister of Nepal, of Republican Nepal. But unfortunately, CA could not give the new constitution within the given framework of the time, and it collapsed down. Second round of Constituent Assembly election held on, and with a small number of Maoist lawmakers in compared to the first one, new constitution was promulgated so far with consensus of the major political parties. The new constitution of Nepal has very good characteristics like republic, socialism, federalism, inclusiveness, secularism, and social justice. Those are the achievements of the long struggle of the Nepalese people. Some shortcomings of the constitution can be fixed by the amendment on the days to come. In the recent days, Nepal is undergoing through general and provincial elections at once. Two major communist parties, Communist Party of Nepal Maoist Center and Communist Party of Nepal UML, Unified Marxist and Leninist, with some other left parties, have declared the electoral alliance with the announced aim of the party unity. It is widely hoped that this alliance would collect the majority of the parliament and the Unified Communist Party will lead Nepal with total stability and prosperity for the long run of the nation. Such government will make the fundamental ground of the future socialist Nepal. The strategy of the Communist Alliance is to establish socialism in the leadership of Communist Party in Nepal, and this will be achieved through the majority of parliament by peaceful competition in the election. Comrade Chairman, respected comrades, ladies and gentlemen, I once again thank the Socialist Party of Bangladesh, General Secretary Comrade Khalid Usman, and comrades of Bangladesh for organizing such an important workshop. Communist Party of Nepal Maoist Center, Chairman Comrade Prachanda, and entire Nepali Communist movement express its solidarity to the communist and socialist struggle in Bangladesh. Thank you all with revolutionary greetings. Long live Marxism, Leninism, Maoism. Long live the teachings of October Revolution. Long live proletariat internationalism. Thank you so much. Red Salute.